Welcome to Behind the Book. It's time now for Behind the Book, hosted by Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion, two authors with a passion for books, no filters, and limitless curiosity. Join them now to find out the real story behind your favorite books and authors. And now, Behind the Book.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Book. I'm here with my co-host, Karen. Anything new and exciting this week?
Well, as you know, Tess, I got braces about 2.5 weeks ago, and I'm really self-conscious about it. I'm convinced that I lisp, but you've told me I'm fine, so I'm going to take you at your word.
Yeah, I cannot hear it, but I know that I understand feeling that, especially because it's probably so different to have those things in your mouth, but it's exciting.
Well, I did this thing before I got them, which was I Googled, how much does it hurt when you get braces? And it led me to a lot of orthodontists' website where they use the word discomfort a lot. You're going to experience some discomfort for a few days. And I thought, well, I'm up to some discomfort if it's going to make my teeth look better. But I have to tell you, they are lying. I was in a lot of pain for about a week. If you had said to me like day 4, I will give you your check back and we can magically take this off your teeth, I would have said yes, because I was like, I don't know that I was prepared for this. I will never be able to chew again. I have to clean my braces. I have a totally different relationship with food now. I look at it like, that looks kind of messy. It looks like rice. Yeah. Rice looks like it would get caught in braces. Yeah. I used to love rice.
Is it worth it to eat this to have to brush my teeth again?
That's right. And I bought a water pick, which I love, by the way. But I'm constantly either flossing, brushing, or water picking my mouth. And so this is probably a good thing. I'm now almost 3 weeks in and no more pain. I'm pretty much used to them. So I think it's going to only get better from here on in.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I remember having them when I was like 11 or 12 or whatever it was. And especially the 4 days after you had them adjusted or whatever, it was painful. I can remember it quite clearly. So it was, and of course, writers, we would pick apart the word choice. It's like, no, it's not discomfort. That's pain.
Maybe they don't think that people would not sign up for it if they.
I think so.
They read, this is going to really hurt. Do you want to do it? No.
Oh, all right. Well, we had a really fun guest today, Marie Force, who I've had the pleasure of meeting in person a couple times at conferences. She seems like she knows who I am, and we message sometimes via Facebook, but if she might not, she might be like, oh, here's another one of my groupies following me around. But anyway, it was really nice of her to agree to be on the podcast, and we enjoyed hearing about her, just her background and different techniques she uses and all that.
I loved hearing her no holds barred attitude about things. There are things that she said that I was like, oh, I mean, I've heard people say that, but not publicly. Like she had a little attitude about the New York Times bestseller list and how it's not really representative of the books that are actually best-selling, which is something in the writer community I've heard talked about a lot. But to have someone of her accomplishments just state it outright shouldn't be a big deal, but it kind of is. So I really admired her candor.
It was great. Yeah. And I think people will get a lot out of the honest interview that we had with her. So,
for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, on with the show. Marie Force is the New York Times best-selling author of contemporary romance, romantic suspense, and erotic romance. Her books have sold more than 10 million copies worldwide, oh my God, have been translated into more than a dozen languages, and have appeared on the New York Times bestseller list more than 30 times. I cannot even imagine. She is also a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller, as well as a Spiegel bestseller in Germany. Welcome, Marie. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your publishing journey. How did you become a novelist, and which of your titles was your very first published book?
So I had the traditional approach of rejection, right, rejection, more rejection, stacks of rejections. So my first published book was a football romance in 2008 called Line of Scrimmage, but that was actually the seventh book I wrote. The first book I wrote was Treading Water, which I published on my own at the end of 2011, and it will celebrate 10 years on sale as of this October, which is exciting. And I was telling Karen ahead of time that I named my business after the character in that book. The very first book, Jack, was an architect in Treading Water. And so my business is called The House That Jack Built, HTJB, because everything came from him. So internally, we call the company just Jack. Like, is Jack paying for that? Yes, usually. So
Nice.
yeah. So even though Line of Scrimmage was the first book that was published, Treading Water was really the one that started my journey. And it really started when my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2003. And she was the one who turned me into a big reader. And we used to share Danielle Steele books and, and all the big romance authors of the time. And so, the thought that she was going to not live to see me do this thing that I said I was going to do for all this time got me moving. And she did get to see a little beginning of it before she passed away in 2004. So my dad, however, was my ride or die best girlfriend throughout this whole thing until he died in 2018. He was the chairman of the board of the company with one job, and that was to call me every day to make sure I was up and writing at 9:00 in the morning. And now his dog has taken over for him and stabs me awake every day. So I think my father is probably making that happen and really greatly enjoying it. So so that's kind of how it all started. But I started self-publishing in 2010, at the end of 2010. So this year will be 11 years self-published, and coming up on 90 books, and 70 of them are self-published. The other 20 were published by a variety of publishers. And as of June of 2020, I am no longer working with traditional publishers. I'm exclusively self-published, which makes me happy. So.
For our listeners that aren't that familiar with self-publishing, could you get into what is advantageous for you doing it that way?
Everything. Every single thing is advantageous. I set my own deadlines. I choose my own editors. I choose my own covers. I am able to make it so that my books are coming out, around the world all on the same day, which you might think should be simple. But when you work with big publishers, you find out that each division is a separate office. And so sometimes, when a book is supposed to come out on a certain day, usually Australia will be first, for example, but Australia set the wrong date. So now they haven't got it yet and everybody else has. And so all the Australian readers are coming to me, and so I have no control over that. So the fact that I have control over all of it makes it so much simpler for me. That's not to say that, I have anything against traditional publishing, because I don't. I wouldn't not ever do it again. If the situation was right, I would certainly do it again. But for the most part, I like being able to set my own schedule. And I'm still dealing with numerous publishers in foreign markets too. So especially in Germany. So I am still, beholden to certain deadlines there and whatnot. But it's easier for me to just do it myself and do it the way I want it done. I feel sometimes for the people on the front lines within the traditional publishing houses, because they have, sometimes hundreds of authors and hundreds of books that they're managing. And in that scenario, how can there not be balls dropped? People are only human. And but when the ball that's dropped is one of yours, and when it happens frequently, you start to really believe oh gosh, I sure do wish I could do something about this on my own. And so I've been traditionally published from 2008 all the way to 2020 without interruption, and then indie published, self-published from 2010 to now. So I was doing both at the same time for a very long time. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize about that, what they now call the hybrid model, that Bob Mayer coined that term years ago, is that it's really difficult. You have to be able to write really a lot, and you have to be able to write fast in order to keep up with both of those demands, and a lot of people think it would be really cool to do both, but they don't realize that the demands of that are really, really brutal. And so to only have my own deadlines to really worry about now is really, it's been freeing. I think I'm writing more than ever now that I'm basically just doing it for myself and my own business.
Yeah, I can
And
definitely see how that would be for sure. So I'm assuming that you have a team that helps you keep on schedule and do all these things. Can you share a little bit about that with
I
us?
have a wonderful team, but I read a Facebook post recently where people think it's bougie to say that you're an author with a team. So I'll just say that I have wonderful colleagues who who are among my best friends and closest family members, most of them, who work with me every day on a variety of things. I have two people that are full time with me and have been since like 2013, who are critical to the whole operation, and then I have a number of part time people who do everything from ship the books to build the boxes that we sell in the store to, you name it, we do it. And so they're great. And I tell them all the time, though, if just one of them could help write the books, that would be awesome. But they're not interested in that job for some reason. So yes, I do have a wonderful team. Even if that's a bougie term that I'm not supposed to use anymore. But I don't know how else to call it because we do work very hand in glove and it is a team effort. I joke, it takes a village to support an author. And sometimes I feel like I'm the village idiot compared to the stuff that they're doing, but thank God for them. And two of them, I have a COO and a CFO, and like they're both two of my best friends, and they would take a bullet for me and vice versa. So they've been with me for years and years. Julie, who's the COO, has been with me since before I was even like officially an author. Like she was reading Treading Water as I was writing it. And she's saying, people speak with contractions. Maybe there ought to be contractions in the dialogue. That's how far back with this she goes, So when I needed a full-time assistant, there was nobody else I would have asked but her. And then Lisa, who's my CFO, she and I raised 4 kids together. 2 are hers, 2 are mine. And our kids were in all the same grades, her 2 and her older one and my older one. And the younger 2 are all in the same grades. So we were together for a lot of years getting kids through school. And she's a CPA in Rhode Island. And she was just what I needed. So she does all the accounting stuff and keeps track of the numbers and spotlights trends. And when we do advertising, she's able to, go back and look and see how it worked. And it's really critical to have somebody for me in that role that kind of overseeing all the business side of it. And she laughs that the only time we ever fight is when it's time to pay estimated quarterlies. Yeah. She'll be like, just sign right here. That's the thing about having your best friends work for you is they don't take any crap from you. And if you want to stay humble, keep your friends close, So
Good advice.
another thing that they've been able to allow me to do is the annual reader weekend that we have every year. Annual means every year, that we've been having since 2014. And Julie is by trade a professional meeting planner, which is a CMP. That's an actual certified meeting planner. So because I have that skill set on my team, she can negotiate with hotels and, we do day tours and bus companies and all this stuff. Then we take them on the Block Island ferry over to see the island that inspired Gansett Island when they're in Rhode Island. And, that's something I wouldn't be able to do without them. They do all of that. So Julie does most of it. And the rest of us just do what we're told.
Now, Tess had mentioned in your bio about the number of times you've been on the New York Times bestseller list. And I actually did some little research and I did some math. And
God, an author math, that's dangerous.
I know. Yes. Well, who knows if I got it right. But the way I did calculated it, you have been on bestseller lists, all of them combined, more than 100 times. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, is it still a thrill? And do you have a clear memory of the first time it happened?
Oh, it's absolutely still a thrill every time. I mean, like it really is. I mean, especially because like some of these series like Gansett and Fatal, which is now moved into a whole new realm with the First Family series, is our book series that I've been writing since 2006. And so the fact that readers are still showing up for them the way that they are is such a thrill for me because, it's not simple to keep a series going for 18 books in one case and 25 in another, and to keep it so that they still want more. And like, that is like a thrill, especially with the longer running series. And then of course, like with the new ones, it's a thrill because it's not easy to do with a new series. And just because they like your other stuff doesn't mean they're going to show up for this. And the fact that they do is really very exciting. And the first time I made USA Today was on Thanksgiving Day. I found out about it in 2012, and I very vividly remember exactly where I was and what pot of gravy I was stirring when I got a text about it being on. I don't even remember who told me, on USA Today, but I also remember the first time I made the New York Times and how exciting that was, because it was one of my self-published Gansett Island books that hit first. So with USA Today, Fatal, one of the Fatal books, I think it was the sixth one, hit first, and that was traditionally published. So that was cool. But it was even better for me to hit with, and it was like something like number 5 or 6 or something on the ebook list, with Waiting for Love, which was the 8th Gansett Island book. And to hit with my series, self-published for the first time, really was a huge, exciting thing. And I'm not somebody who gets crazy freaky about, I don't freak out, about stuff that I know other people do. I'm just not like wired that way. But I will say that I had a little freak out over hitting the New York Times, and that I was on the phone with one of my neighbors, and I made such a scene that I had to call her back and apologize, because she was like, just happened to call me like right after I heard this news.
Yes. Well, the great thing about you hitting lists with your self-published titles is that it gives so much inspiration to other self-published authors. It's like, okay, it can be done. And
Well, except the New York Times has frozen us out now.
well,
The New York
yeah, I
Times
did hear
no
that.
longer acknowledges self-published books, which is just a travesty. So if you want to know where you would have ended up, if you have a big gangbuster hit and you want to know where you would have ended up on the ebook list for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal list is a pretty good indicator. They were usually pretty hand in glove. If like you were number 5 on the ebook list at the New York Times, you were usually number 5 on the Wall Street Journal too. So if you want to know where you would have ended up, the Wall Street Journal is a good barometer. And really, to me, the one that really is impressive anymore, and always should have been more so than the New York Times, is USA Today, because USA Today is an amalgamation of everything. Ebook, print, paperback, hardcover, you name it. It's all formats in one list. So if you make, like, say, the top 10 in the USA Today, that's a pretty big deal. The top 50 in the USA Today is a pretty big deal. The top 50 is what gets put in the paper the next day. So, yeah, and I just think like you're up against so many more variables on USA Today, and to score a pretty good hit there is probably a bigger deal than making the New York Times ever was, because that list is all segmented by, paperback. There used to be an ebook list until a couple of indie authors hit number 1. And then suddenly, literally 1 week after one of the ebook authors hit number 1, the list went away. And of course, we still tease her about that.
This killer.
Way to buzzkill for everyone, But I mean, clearly, our theory on this is that the big publishers are the ones paying for the New York Times book section. And they don't like seeing indie authors on the list because, I guess they feel threatened by it. I can't imagine why else. And they're probably threatening to pull ad dollars. So, the New York Times buckled to that pressure. It's pathetic. It really is. And you can definitely quote me on that, because the list that they are putting out is not indicative of the top selling books. Jennifer Armentrout was the number 1 bestseller on USA Today and did not make New York Times because she's small published by a small publisher. That's bull.
Mhm.
With the number 1 book in the country, and I mean, not by a small amount, by a landslide, doesn't make the New York Times. That's, that list is irrelevant when that happens. Well, I mean, really, what are you broadcasting? The best-selling traditional published books. Okay, well, that needs an asterisk because they're not necessarily the best-selling, books. I made number 9 with the book I put out in April, and it didn't make the New York Times. I knew it wouldn't, but number 9 on USA Today should have been number 1 or 2 on the ebook list for the New York Times.
Well, speaking of inspiration, to Karen's point, I did want to say that you have been a huge inspiration to me, and in one particular way, and that is, no, you're going to like this, how prolific you are and disciplined. And I know you're disciplined because you can't put out that many books a year if you're not. And every day I think to myself, Marie Force has probably got 3,000 words already and it's only 8 o'clock. So I got to get my butt in the seat.
You're on the West Coast, so that may be true.
Exactly. No, that's what I always think. I'm like, okay, it's 11 o'clock for her. She's probably almost done. Anyway, so I wanted to thank you for that. And I heard you speak at a conference about maybe 5 years ago, and it just resonated with me, and it just put a little burr under my saddle, so to speak. So I appreciate that. I'm up to 40 now, but I'm not close to you still.
No, you're getting there. That's awesome. And I will say, like, having discipline in the day is really important. It's a big part of, I treat it like a job. I was telling Karen before that I take part of August and kind of chill out a little bit, but I still wrote 2,000 words a day every day in August, which is 62,000 words, at the end of the month. And I try to write 2,000 words a day, 7 days a week, unless I'm editing or something like that. Like, it does add up. I just did the math on that. Actually, it adds up to more than, like, I think I'd have to do it again, but it was close to 750,000 words a year, which is more than 7 books, So it depends. Some people write shorter. I tend to write longer. I tend to write in the 80 to 100,000 range. So for me, 750,000 words a year, which I don't write 750,000 words a year, but that's the goal. Even 700,000 is 7 books for me. It does put discipline in the day. And I, like, during August, for example, when I was trying to take a little bit of a break, my husband would say, "What do you want to do today?" I'd be like, "Oh, I want to do blah, 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 but I got to get my 2K in first." And so I would do that. And then we would go do whatever. And then I wouldn't think about work for the rest of the day. So that's how I take it easy. But getting the words on the page is what keeps me in business. And the readers are very excited about more books. And, you don't want to keep them waiting too long if you can avoid that. Even though they say I don't write fast enough, but I'm just like, okay. But I'm also writing multiple series. So that takes tending to, in a different way.
A lot of your books have titles that are song titles. We were curious about that. What's the connection there for you?
There really isn't one, except for, like, and the joke with my kids is that, like, so I have a whole series. My Vermont series is all Beatles titles, and people are like, "Oh, you must love the Beatles." I'm like, not like you would think, but the titles really work for my books. So I got the idea to use the Beatles titles, and then I'm like, okay, I need a connection. So I made the dad a crazy Beatles fan. Like, he's over the top with the Beatles. And so that kind of made it work for the series. But I'm not a huge Beatles fan, but I really like the way the titles worked for this particular series. And I've had a lot of fun with them. And the last book was Come Together, and, like, the next one is Here, There, and Everywhere. And I've had Let It Be, which is my favorite Beatles song. So, but yeah, like, I really, it's not necessarily intentional, so to speak, but I do have quite a few books that have song titles as titles. And I have Someone Like You coming up in February, and that is inspired by Adele's song for sure. And it will work. You'll see why it works with the story.
So if someone is not familiar with your books, is there one that you would suggest they start with?
I would say either Made for Love, which is the first Gansett Island book that tends to be the one that hooks readers, or Fatal Affair, which is the first Fatal book. Those are my 2 big series. Fatal is right now currently in Kindle Unlimited for the first time, and that's been really cool. It's done really well in Kindle Unlimited, and it's been fun to see a lot of new readers coming to the series. I like to do that once in a while. I wasn't a fan of Kindle Unlimited for a long time until I had a reader tell me, because I write long series, and then you start to realize that's a pretty big investment for a reader to make, especially like 24 books or 18 books or whatever. So if you can put some of them in KU, it gives that readers who don't have a big book budget the opportunity to access your series. And once it was really presented to me that way by a reader, it kind of changed the way I thought about KU. Obviously, it can be very lucrative for authors if the page reads are great, and it does, it's a different sort of marketing strategy, but it's definitely worth it to have them there for the readers who couldn't afford to buy 16 books, especially when they were still under the domain of the publisher who had them all at $7.99. Now the rights have reverted back to me, and they will never all be $7.99 again. So
$7.99 is a pretty high price point.
It's a really high price point for a series that's 11 years old. The price of entry is too high at that cost. And the first 3 or 4 books will probably always be $3.99 going forward. I'm not saying that the later books, won't stay at a higher price, but the cost of entry is not going to be $7.99 per, because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, in this market where readers are so price sensitive, I'm a big fan of quantity, big numbers of readers versus getting that $7.99 from one reader. I'd rather get the $3.99 from 10 readers than the $7.99 from one. And that's kind of always been my feeling about pricing. Although I do, my front list is priced a little bit higher than some, but I'm okay with that because I know what goes into, the books are long too. They're not 50,000 words. They're long. The new First Family series, the first book was 110,000 words and the second one's 105. So if you're paying $6.99 for that, you're getting a really long book for that compared to what is kind of the going rate right now for word count.
So we touched on it a little bit, but can you tell us what your writing day is like?
It starts with coffee. Today it started with my grand dog, who's 80 pounds. So we have 3 dogs of our own, and our daughter's been home for a couple of weeks because her school in New York is virtual right now. So she's a teacher, but so she's been hanging with us because she likes the end of summer. And that 80-pound dog assaulted me this morning, and that's how I woke up with him landing on me. So that's how my day began today. Starts with coffee and then, some Facebook. I check the papers. I read all the big papers. And I get a lot of ideas from that too, I will say. If you're not widely reading a lot of things besides romance novels, I suggest that if you're a romance author, there's a lot of good fodder to be found in the news. And then I dive into the writing pretty much right away and get my 2K in. And then once I have that in, if I have the opportunity to do something else, I don't feel guilty about it. I do. Today, I've been writing all day and I've been working on 2 different books today. And then, of course, all the other business stuff that comes up, during the course of the day. But I'm constantly dealing with email, even when I'm writing, because I got to keep everybody else moving forward with what they're doing. And if they're waiting on me, they can't finish what they're doing. So I do try to, respond to them and get stuff done so that they can keep doing what they're doing too. I'm never completely off the grid with the writing. I don't really do that and I think that goes back to when I was working the previous job I had before this. I had to keep a lot of balls in the air at the same time. And so I think that kind of trained me for this. So. And
are you a plotter or a pantser?
Pants, 100%. I make it up as I go along. I would love to grow up and be a plotter, but it's never going to happen. 90 books, I think that ship has sailed. I get these big ideas about for my new Wild Widows book. I want to do this new series I'm launching. I want to do all these character profiles ahead of time. And then I just don't do it. I want to, but I just don't. I have all these lofty aspirations that never materialize when it comes to planning ahead. It all just gets made up in the moment.
So what parts of writing fiction are the easiest for you and what is the hardest?
Well, writing the series, I really like writing series because it gives you a pre-existing world that you can just step back into and pick up where you left off and go forward from there. I really like that part of it. That's what makes it quote unquote easy for me. People say you write 6 or 7 books a year. Yeah, but 4 of them are in worlds I've been writing in for years, in some cases for 15 years. So that surely does make it easier than what I'm doing right now, writing this first Wild Widow book. Setting up a whole new group of characters, a whole new situation. Wild Widows is a spinoff from Fatal, a character that was introduced in book 14 of the Fatal series when her husband was killed suddenly by a stray bullet as he was walking down a street in DC. And of course, my homicide detective was called to the scene, and she's the one who had to tell this woman, and she really felt for her and has since reached out to her several times, and they've become unlikely friends. My Sam Holland is not known for liking people. So the fact that she's become friends with this woman is startling to her and everyone around her. But I've decided to spin her off into a new series where, because she's going to become a member of this group of young widows, people who are widowed, in their 20s and 30s and who are left to face the rest of their lives, with this big empty question mark staring in front of them. And the concept behind the Wild Widows group is that they all have to be open to the possibility of what they call a chapter 2. So that's the one requirement for membership, if you will, in their group, is that you have to at least be open to the idea of a chapter 2. So Ronnie's story is going to launch that new series. So it's a big deal to set up this whole new group of people. Granted, there will be some people from the Fatal series showing up in that, but for the most part, this is a complete spinoff of that. That character really intrigued me, and I wanted to do more with her. So here I am writing yet another series. But this one's going to be a little different. I think it's going to be a little bit more women's fiction-y than straight up romance, which is fun to do something a little different in that regard. So, but there will be romance in it too. It just won't be that won't be the focus the way it has been in most of my other books. So something different.
What advice would you give to aspiring authors?
The same thing that we just talked about, right? Every day. I think a lot of people get hung up on the how to get published and what to do with a book once you've written it. I have a lot of people that ask me oh, I want to publish a book. And I'm like, oh, so what, have you written it? No, that's always the answer is always no, I haven't written it. I'm like, well, that's a really big part of the whole publishing process. So I think a lot of people think it's really fun and how cool it would be to write a book, but the actual writing of it is another thing, And I think if you don't really love, I do see a lot of people say how torturous they find the writing process. And I just I can only speak for myself. If it was torturous for me, I wouldn't do it because I'd be so I'm out of here, I'm not doing this, So for me, it's the most fun thing I can do. If it wasn't, I mean, there's no way I'd be still doing it, So I feel if you hate it, it might not be the thing for you. If you love to write, then you just need to do a lot of it. And I remember finishing Treading Water, a very vivid memory of printing it out. And it was a huge brick of a book. It was 155,000 overwritten words. It was massive, right? And I took it to a book club meeting of authors at Barnes & Noble that used to meet in my local town. And I'm like, look, I got a book. It's 155,000 words. They were like, what? Wait, what? So, completely overwritten, overwrought, a lot of other words that start with the word over. And, I learned a lot from that process. I pared it way down and I later published that book at 92,000 words that told exactly the same story, right? So I learned all the big lessons with that. I learned what not to do. I've never done anything like that again. And in fact, the second book in that series, which was the second book I wrote, is 91,000 words, exactly the same 91,000 words I wrote because I'm like, okay, well, don't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was still working full-time for somebody else, and it was a much more than just an average full-time job. It was very involved. And I had two young kids who are middle school and elementary school. And I was doing this on the side. So I didn't really have quote unquote time to fix another big mess like that. So I never let myself make another big mess like that. I became much more deliberate about what was allowed in. And I really feel it took 6 years from the time I finished Treading Water until I published it. Of course, I wasn't working on it all that time. I was writing other books too, but I learned all the big lessons with that book. And I really feel the book that was published, sometimes I go back and read that published book and I'm like, it's so different than the one I wrote that I almost don't relate to the one that got published because I'm like, wait, that's not what that's, So I'm like, wait, when did I do that? But I learned what not to do. And because I always had such time restrictions when I was still working outside of the house, which this year will be at the end of this year, I'll be 10 years self-employed. But before that, I didn't have time to have to rewrite an entire book. So I was very deliberate about what got in and what didn't, and making sure I got it right the first time. And I'm still that way. I don't move on until I'm happy with something because I don't have time. I went to a seminar once where this author said that she writes 5 drafts of a book. And I'm just like, what? 5 drafts. I'm like, okay, I write 1 and then I fix it. Okay. I mean, who has the time to write 5 drafts? I'm like, if you're going to be a professional working author with readers who are clamoring for your next book, you cannot be writing 5 drafts. It's just not going to happen. So
I think some writing instructors make that sound like you have to do it that way.
Oh, please give me a break. Those are the people that are teaching the MFA classes, right?
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
I was wondering, do you have any secrets to impart as far as your storytelling? Is there something you always make sure to include that your readers look for?
My readers like the funny in my books. I know that. They really enjoy. I try to bring as much funny into everything as I can, and they really respond to that, to humor. Whether it's gallows humor in the Fatal series, where they're making inappropriate banter while they're at a murder scene or something, it's just how they cope, and they're always constantly saying, God, we're so disrespectful, but yet nobody's more respectful of the victims than they are too, so you got to present it properly in that way. But in like, for example, Gansett Island, there's a scene in book, I think it's book 14, where two of the young kids come running into a Christmas gathering completely naked. And when they're asking, like, what are you doing? They're playing naked boy, naked girl. And like naked boy, naked girl is like an absolute institution among the Gansett Island readers. And now all the guys on Gansett use it as their pickup line, you know, and like, and that's a story that's right from my own family, much to my child's dismay. She'll kill me. But that happened with her when she was very young with a cousin. And they were like, it's like they were saying they were playing Monopoly. And we're like, wait, what? You know? But stuff like that, the readers, like, I wrote a scene that's in the upcoming Gansett Island book that I just revealed to them today that I know is going to become part of the Gansett Island canon. They're going to be all about that. So yeah, like just stuff like that, they really respond to. They really like I write about a lot of families, some of them functional, most of them functional, a few dysfunctions here and there, but they really respond to that because you find that a lot of them don't have it. And so they really respond to those big families. I wrote a novella, I want to say maybe 4 years ago, that I put out on Christmas Day. And the readers went crazy over that. And I got so many emails about, oh, I didn't have any plans for today, but now I do. And so now every year I try to put something out the week of Christmas for that group of people that these fictional families have come to mean so much to them. I'm actively trying to end one of my series, my Vermont series, and they're actively pushing back about that. I mean, they come to feel like these people are real and they really want more time with them. And of course, that's the best compliment you can ever get. But it does come with, you know, the certain challenge of trying to meet that threshold every time.
Is there a writing book that you would recommend to someone starting out?
I've only read one book about writing, and it's On Writing by Stephen King. That's the only one I've ever read because when I was first doing this, like I said, I was working full time. My husband was deployed. My kids were little, and I had no time to write, let alone read about writing. By the time I was at a point where I should have been reading about writing, I didn't care anymore what other people said about writing. I was just doing it my way. And like, I was very careful not to let other people's way of doing things intrude on my way. For example, I once went to a workshop for my local RWA chapter where it was about plotting. And they were handing out all these worksheets that you're supposed to fill out before you start writing a book. And I literally felt like I was breaking out in hives. I was like, people do this? I had to leave because it was making me feel physically ill to know that like I was doing it all wrong, you know? And so I stopped going to those sorts of things because I didn't want to know how other people were doing it. If you've got something that works for you, just do it. And don't worry about how other people are doing it. And if you read how to write, you may be putting obstacles in front of your own process and not allowing it to flourish because you're so busy trying to do it the way everyone else does it.
Do you ever have doubts about a book, either while you're writing it or as it's just about to be released?
Not too often, only because, again, and going back to what I said earlier about time and like, you know, having to make the most of it. And if I'm not feeling a book for whatever reason, it's not going to get written. I mean, like, I'll know that before it gets to the point where it's about to come out. So no, I mean, like by the time it's in the pipeline about to be released, I'm not having any doubts about it because if I'm not happy with it, it wouldn't be in the pipeline. And that's like, I know one of your other questions was about like, you know, who's my ideal reader that I target. And the ideal reader that I target is myself and only myself. I have to be 100% happy with it myself before I will let anyone else see it. If I'm not happy with it, no one else sees it. So I'm reader number one for me. And I spend a lot of time, more than I want to, having to reread my own books because like, you know, the older I get, the harder it is to keep track of everything. And the only way that I can effectively maintain continuity in these series is to be rereading them a lot. And it also gives me, of course, great ideas for future books. The reread is always very productive that way. But I'm very particular about not releasing a new book in a series until if I haven't recently read the most recent one before it. And I've learned that lesson the hard way. I'm very, very particular about making sure the continuity from one book to the next lines up. And that just takes a tremendous amount of time, you know? So if I'm not 100% happy with a book, you'll never see it.
Is there a book that you'd love to write, but for some reason you haven't done it yet?
I do have a thriller that I'd like to write, but it would be very, very off-brand. So I'm not saying I won't do it, but it kind of runs around in my mind a little bit. That would be kind of fun. I have a third book I'd like to write in my 5 years gone, 1 year home world, where a terrorists blow up a U.S. based cruise ship, and that kind of sets off a bunch of things that have so far propelled 2 books, and the possibility of many more books in that world is endless. I'm not sure, if I can take that on, which is why I'm trying to end my Vermont series, because I want to make some room for some new stuff, but the readers are pushing back on that. Which, listen, that's a good problem to have. It's good. I call that job security. But, I would like to be doing some other stuff, but I really am beholden to the now 5 series that I'm writing, and not trying to get into doing something else. And then I've finished a couple of series that they want me to restart with more of. So it's just, I just need 86 hours in the day to do everything I want to do. And people say, do you ever sleep? I'm like a dead woman. Like when it's over, it's over. Like, boom, like a tree falling in the woods.
So we're always curious, does your family read your books?
My extended family does. My aunts do, and my cousins do. My children and my husband do not, which I'm fine with. So my husband's read some of them way back early on, but he likes to read stuff like Lewis and Clark, this one climbing a mountain and that one like walking for 10 years. And I'm just like, I've turned him into a reader. It took a long time. I've turned him into a reader. It took like 20 years for me to turn him into a reader. But the stuff he reads, we're not compatible in that regard. Yeah, so he's not really a romance. He's not my target audience. Although I do tell him that if he wants some insight into me, maybe he ought to spend more time reading my books. So I have a ton of men that read them, though. I hear from them. I have one who's 91 years old and lives in San Francisco, and he came to my reader event there. He's so cute. He comes in with his windbreaker and his little suspenders, and he's like, "Where's Marie Force?" And we've been email buddies ever since. Like I hear from him like maybe every couple of weeks, and I'm always like, if I don't hear from him, I'm emailing him like, "Where are you? Write to me." He's like, "I'm here. I'm just rereading your books for the 900th time." So. He only reads me, and we love each other. He's a great guy. I almost want to go back to San Francisco just so I can see him again. He walked in right. It was this reader event was shortly after my dad died, and he reminded me very much. And my best friend Lisa was with me, and she and I were both like, "Whoa!" Like just a similar look to him as my dad in the blue windbreaker with the khaki pants. I'm like, "Oh my God, that's like just what my dad would have worn," Yeah, it was pretty cool to meet him. And I have a lot of guys that read my books. My guy is not one of them, however. So
We're finding that's pretty common, actually. Most authors, their immediate families do not read their books.
fine. I think someday when I'm not around anymore, my kids might be curious, and they want to know when that's going to be so that they can start to do all the fun things that I won't let them do. Like they want to jump out of perfectly good airplanes and stuff. And I tell them not until I'm gone. And they're like, "Well, can you give us an ETA on when we can start having some fun, So I think once I'm gone, they'll appreciate me more when I'm sitting in an urn on the fireplace watching them all. And, my kids are 26 and soon to be 23. My daughter is the older one and my son is the younger. And it's just not it's not their thing. But they are very happy with what I do and how I do it. Obviously in high school, whatever, they took some heat about their mom writing sexy romance from various people. And they always had the best comebacks. Like somebody said something to my daughter about it one time and she's like, "My mom's books are paying for my college. What's your plan?" Like I thought that was so awesome. Like just go girl. And, sometimes people have stuff to say about it, but for the most part, like, we're all fine with whatever anybody. I tell the kids all the time, like, you just have to have 0 F's to give if you write sexy romance under your real name. You just gotta not care what people think. I did have a little meltdown. I was at a hockey banquet because my son played varsity hockey, and I was at the hockey banquet with all my hockey mom friends right before my Quantum series was about to be released. And I did have like this moment of agita, like where I'm like, oh my God, because like that one is like really like it's erotic. It's like the sexiest thing I've ever written. And I'm like, oh my God, the Forces aren't going to be able to show their faces at the hockey banquet next year. And I said that to one of them, and one of the moms they're all my good friends, but she was like, oh my God, when are we going to get it on our Kindles? Because I send everything direct to their Kindles. And I'm like, I don't know if I want you guys to read that. They're like, yeah, we want that. And I'm like, I had no idea you guys were all such a bunch of, and she goes, sluts? I'm like, oh my God. Suffice to say, the Forces were able to show their faces at the hockey banquet the next year. So that was awesome. I mean, it's further validation that, like, the people who matter are the only ones that you really need to worry about, but writing under your real name. When I first started, they were like, oh, if your last name is really Force, you do not have a pen name. Okay. So there went my opportunity to escape into some subterfuge, but alas, I was stuck with my married name, which is in fact my real name. People don't believe that, but it is true.
I always assumed it was a pen name.
It's not.
Oh man.
No.
You must get that a lot.
I knew only because I followed Marie for a while, and I've heard that story before. And I thought that when I heard it, I thought, well, if there was ever a better name for a person, I never heard it.
I know. My brother said at one point, if you decide he was in a band at the time, he goes, if you decide not to use it for the, when you get married, can I have it for the band? Because he thought George Force would be better than George Sullivan. So you'd have a little bit more punch to it. But those were the people that mattered. Like everyone else, you just can't care what people think. I mean, and there's a few people. There's this one guy that lives in our town. I swear to God, my husband and I laugh. We never run into him that he doesn't have some nudge, wink, wink thing to say. And we're just both like, grow up, like just grow up, like just stop already. Like we get it. Like you're just 12. Okay. We get it. And I don't like the word smut either. I will not stand for that word to be used to describe my books, and I don't like it when romance authors use it. I'm going to say that straight up. I feel like it diminishes.
It's disparaging, I think.
It is. And I think I went to a whole event where that was like the key word was like, and I'm just like, wait, wow, what am I doing here? Because this is not how I roll, and I just was like, no, I'll never come to this again. I just find it to be disrespectful of what we've all built as women and like empowered women. And like, I just like to diminish it by calling it smut or porn or whatever. I mean, I wrote a book last year about a heroine who has rheumatoid arthritis. Okay. Like now you don't see that every day, but she's 29 years old. She's a hairdresser. Her livelihood is completely tied up in her ability to use her hands, which are failing her. Like romance is so much more than the sex. Okay. It's so much more. And if you just diminish it down to just the sex, I think you're just missing the point. That's just my feeling. And I hate when people call it smut. I hate it. So there. That's my diatribe for today.
So for you, what is the best part of being an author?
Oh, geez. It's the ability to sit in my pajamas and make shit up all day. Like that people, and like, I make stuff up about like people in my life too and like, I tell the story and then I tell it so many times, I'm not sure if it's true or not anymore. Like we'll go on vacation and I'll come back with these stories about my kids and they're like, that didn't happen. I'm like, but I feel so strongly that it did, like the being able to make stuff up and to get paid for it and like to communicate with readers every day and to, talk to them the way that I do. And like, that's just like, it's unbelievable to me that that's my life. I mean, even so, what is this 13 years after being published for the first time to still, be doing this and to have had readers connect with my books to the point that they're like writing me these long letters about why I shouldn't end the series. I mean, like that is such a thrill, that just never gets old. And, the excitement of it all, of a new book and, seeing a cover for the first time or I got to recover all my Fatal books with the couple that I chose to be my Sam and Nick. I just got to do that. That was thrilling. There's lots of other fun stuff going on behind the scenes with the books that, is cool. And so just to have all that is like what makes up my days. It's like, it's amazing to me. It's truly, it's fun.
So you picked the actual models that appear on the cover.
For the Fatal series I did. Yes. And we're about to do a second photo shoot with that same couple because when I chose the couple for, it was supposed to be for the first family series, then I got the rights back to Fatal. So I had to recover 17 books. So I used all the good stuff from the first photo shoot to recover the initial books. And so now we're going to do another photo. And I also forgot to put wedding rings on my models. Like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I totally forgot their wedding rings because they're married after book 3. in the series. And so we're at book 18. So yes, very much married. So the first thing I did when we were going to do the new photo shoot was to buy some nice cubic zirconia and just correct that too, so we just need more photos for covers because we have tons of good stuff for promotion, but we don't have stuff for covers. So, so we're doing a second photo shoot with them later this month. And actually my best friend, Lisa, and I, we styled this one. And so, that was fun. We got to go shopping for a whole day and dress these characters that I've been writing since 2006. I'm like, no, he wouldn't wear that. No, she would look good in that, So,
that would be super fun.
Oh, it was so much fun. That whole day we were like, does this really work? Are we working? Does this count?
Is Jack paying for this?
Jack definitely was paying for that. Yes. Jack's wallet is taking a hit on that, but it was so worth it. So much fun to do that. We just could not believe. And Sam wears this diamond key necklace that Nick gave her on their wedding day. And I found that necklace, obviously it's not real diamonds, but I found it. I was shrieking in Macy's, look, I found the key. So yeah, and it was just, the whole thing was really fun. So we just shipped it all to Minnesota today for the photo shoot. So, and this winter, my husband and I might take off and go south for a couple months. And I can take my laptop with me and do it from anywhere. So that's kind of cool too. Now that our kids are out of college and, well, my son's in grad school, but I don't feel like I have to be nearby for that.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I can do it from anywhere is pretty cool. So,
well, at the end of our interview, we always ask a bonus round of questions. They're not writing related at all. And we kind of do them rapid fire. And you just say the first thing that comes to mind. Are you up for this?
Sure.
Okay. The first question is, what is one food that will never get past your lips?
Liver.
Who would you want to play you in a movie?
Scarlett Johansson.
Why not? What superpower would you pick given the opportunity?
The ability to transport myself anywhere without ever again having to step on an airplane.
What's your biggest guilty pleasure?
All forms of chocolate.
What is the worst job you've ever had?
Burger King.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, they still had polyester uniforms.
Not a good look, huh?
Very traumatizing.
If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Forensic science.
What is your favorite scent?
Oh, sage.
What is the most terrifying thing you've ever done?
Captained the 40-foot boat that my parents left to me.
What's
Those are the people that come with me. That my knees are knocking every time.
What's one thing you're really bad at?
Everything that's not writing. Walking upstairs tends to be a problem for me. I am literally not good at pretty much anything other than I hear I'm pretty good at writing sometimes. Yeah. I mean, really, there's not much else.
If you could live your life over again, would you want to?
Yeah, maybe just to spend more time with my mom. My mom died when I was pretty young, so I was only 38 when she died. So yes, I would like to go back to have her back again. So I would probably do it just for that purpose. But everything else, probably not. I wouldn't want to, but for any other reason than that.
All right. That's it.
That's it.
This was super fun. Thank you for doing this for us. We were so thrilled. Yes.
Thanks for having me. Congratulations on your successful podcast. It's a great endeavor.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks again, Marie.
All right, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Book, brought to you by authors Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and post a question in the comment section. This has been Behind the Book.